I'm guessing most of you are probably getting just a little bit sick of this long, hot summer. There's been a lot of fun fishing to be had, but personally me, and I'm sure many of you, are chomping at the bit for some ice fishing. And honestly, it's not too far away. We're starting to see some content pop up on social media, different companies talking about ice fishing products and getting ready for the season. And I figured that right now would be a good time to throw some ice content your way. And we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is big jumbo perch. Now we're gonna be sitting down with Brian Brosdahl, who in my opinion is just one of the biggest perch aficionados out there. Definitely the biggest perch fan that I know. And we're gonna be talking everything that you need to know to catch perch this winter. Now before we jump into the hardcore information, Bro is gonna share a little bit about why he loves perch fishing so much.
You're targeting a fish that makes up a good volume of what exists in a lake. And we're lucky where we live, there's dozens of lakes that have jumbo perch in big bodies of water. It's a volume proposition. So I get to set the hook more often. I get to have something fighting on my line more often. They're wonderful fish for eating, and probably one of the more expensive fish if you were to go out and buy it somewhere, because perch are the resources can't keep up with commercial demand, and on the Great Lakes is where they get most of them. But perch are little predators. They're the apex predator of the flat, amongst the smaller fish. I mean, perch are aggressive and you catch the big ones right away typically, but they could also be tough. They could be a morning or evening bite when they motivate and move through, and they can hide in very little vegetation because they physically lay on the bottom. So it's a real challenge for people to find them sometimes. So I would say that's one of the reasons. Is I've had tremendous days where you catch more than 100 perch, but you don't keep them all. You're catching 100 perch in 10 feet of water, and you keep a meal of perch no more than 10. It's just a blast, and you're getting big ones and all different sizes. They call it perch jerking because you're jerking perch until you get the right ones, and that's fun. A lot of activity, and that's why I love perch. Just like I like bluegills or crappies, but sometimes crappies can be deep and they can be exploders. They're dead when you catch them. I don't like that. Perch, I could chase them somewhere. They're biting shallow.
All right, now let's spill some info. First things first, Bro is gonna be covering down probably one of the most popular questions that we hear, and that is, where would you start to fish if you're on a new lake and you've never been there before?
On lakes that I've never fished before, and I'm targeting jumbo perch, well, first you find out if they're in there, and if they are, a lot of times early in the winter, perch will be on shallow flats. Not ultra shallow. I mean, in a lake like Devil's Lake, shallow flat could be something that's 10 to 15 feet or 18 feet. Deep flats are what I would consider the 20s to 40s or even 50s on some bodies of water. And so shallower flats where there could be chara beds, the old weed beds that are stubble, you're going to find crayfish, insects, minnows, a little bit of everything. It depends on how freeze up is. If freeze up doesn't go right, or if there's a lot of toxins given off on the weeds, they won't be there. They'll just dump to the deep flats right away. So keep those things in mind. If you got good green weeds or semi-green weeds, part of the weed is green, and you're finding bait fish, there'll be perch. But if you're not seeing even bait fish, get out of there, because the oxygen level could be wrong, or the temperature could be wrong, or there could be a high number of toxins in the water. So flats, shallow or deep, first place I'd go.
Now perch are usually pretty eager biters and really a novice friendly fish, but that doesn't mean that some anglers aren't out there on the ice making big time mistakes that are really hurting them. Here is one that Bro thinks is really pretty fatal, and he sees it quite often.
One of the bigger mistakes I see people hunting perch, really wanting to get some perches, they'll drill a spot out, drop their depth finders, look, and not see anything and take off. And the thing is, you could out jump an area. You got a flat or a weed bed that's a mile long, and you're going a mile and a half, you're not near it anymore. and maybe you didn't see the fish, you go to the basin right away and you're not seeing them there. I've seen groups of tricked out machines and people drilling and working using their devices, catch nothing, and then at the right time you go out there a little bit later, and on the first couple holes they drilled, there's fish in every one of them. It's a timing issue. If fish lay down on the bottom, you're not going to see them with conventional electronics unless you use it like a 360, because it sees fish on the bottom. And but if they're laying there not moving, you know, it's just like sitting in a deer stand when the deer are sleeping somewhere. It's a long day, but you still have to fish your holes. You have to fish your way through, drop flashy spoons halfway down or right under the ice. If you're in 10 feet or less, you could jig 2 feet under the ice to draw the fish in from a distance. They could be tucked behind a little cara bed. They could be in some coontail. They can't see through it, but they can see up around it. The refraction on the ice draws the perch in from a distance.
Now, it's extremely important if you want to catch fish consistently, you need to understand the fish that you're chasing and why it does what it does. Now, in the case of perch, one of their defining features is their eyesight, and that affects how and when you can catch them.
Perch have an eyesight that you know, works for them, but it's not really good. They can't really see that well at night, not like walleyes. They don't have the supervision like bluegills and crappies, so they're at the mercy of being able to feed on a little bit bigger things. They will eat bloodworms. They can see a bloodworm, but anything more micro is going to be a bluegill or crappie can sift that stuff out with their gill rakers. They can feed where a perch would never see any food. But perch, it's the crunch factor. Perchy crustaceans. They eat crunchy bugs, they eat crayfish, and then they munch on minnows. And they even eat their own. So perch have an eyesight that's daytime, so that's why it's a great fish. It's banker's hours. You go out in the sun on a sunny day, you catch perch. Flashy spoons. If you get dark days, if you get darker water, that's where a fire belly spoon or a glow shot jig will work really nice. Or, you know, the electric perch, some of these brighter colors, glow perch. These are going to be great baits to use under these conditions. And in gin clear water, perch can be at any depth. If the water should clear from zebra mussels, the perch could be on the absolute bottom. You know, if the turnover's there and the oxygen's down, they go to any depth. I've seen perch down to 84 feet of water when I was fishing for eel pout. 84 feet, jumbo perch school swimming by. Blows my mind.
Now, another piece of the puzzle that you need to be thinking about is whether or not you want to be fishing in the mud or on hard bottom.
You know, different bottom types are important to know when you're targeting perch, because sometimes they're in the mud. They're out in the mud, and other times they're in hard bottom. Well, when are they going to be in the mud? Primarily, perch will be out there chasing, you know, insect life that's in the mud, and the minnows will be there too. Minnows will be eating the zooplankton that rises up out of these fertile areas. Hard bottom areas are good, especially early and late winter, as the fish are moving into areas that have good oxygen content, not a lot of toxins from weeds. You know, cara beds don't give off all the toxins like some of the other dying and decaying weeds. It's an algae, so it's actually there's no roots and it's not attached to the bottom. But hard bottom areas like that hold, I mean, there's little darters on the bottom. There's crayfish, obviously. Perch never get tired of crayfish. If a crayfish is in 45 feet of water and they're cruising by, they're going to eat them if it's a small one. And crayfish do drop down into super deep water. We're finding more and more nowadays because of the clear waters. But muddy bottom areas, I find myself targeting mud areas, big mud flats. The part of the lake that has all the hatches in the summertime is where I'm at in midwinter, and that's where the perch go to roam and never run out of food. The break that goes to the basin, where that hard bottom meets the soft bottom, that edge, and sometimes way off on the flat. The middle of nowhere you might think, but it's really not. It's a place for them to graze on insect life, just like they would in hard bottom areas. And so fish them like football fields. Break it down, fish that area, and then move on. Don't over drill. I mean, my holes are going to be real far apart. I hit something, then I fine tune it. So there's a way to tackle big flats, and flats are the new frontier.
Now what's great about perch is the fact that you can target them all season long. You can catch a perch any month out of the year, but that doesn't mean that some months aren't better than others.
You know, one of my favorite times to fish for perch through the ice has typically been later in the winter when they school up and they start moving shallow. It's fun to catch late winter shallow perch. These are perch that have dwelled in basins, you know, out in the deepest part of the lake all winter. And when they move up shallow, and this could be in March, depending on the thaw, and there's also photogenics, which is the angle of the sun. Animals and fish know what time of year it is just by their senses and their instincts. But the fish will move up shallow, or the perch, and kind of a mock spawning run, because when the ice goes out, even if it's a large body of water and there's some ice, they go on their spawning run, and they go up and start looking for places to spawn. And these edges, these weeds, and they stick their eggs to weeds. So weeds, or in the Dakotas it might be brush. They stick their eggs and then they leave immediately, the females, and the males linger. So the best time is late ice, when they're starting to come up and get ready to spawn. Late ice, and when it's thawing and the water's running down the holes. Somewhere on some lake there's a pile, maybe a mile of perch, big ones.
Now let's get the rundown on Bro's go-to favorite wintertime perch baits.
Some of my favorite perch lures right away, I have to say, is a buckshot rattle spoon. Doesn't matter where I fish. I've fished, you know, the Midwest, Dakotas, out to Cascade, Idaho, and used buckshots everywhere. You know, it's as small as a 32nd ounce. An 1/8 ounce is perfect for most places. As you get to the shrimp-fed lakes of North, South Dakota, smaller is better. So the smallest buckshot you can get, and there are colors that kind of push through from place to place. But I've learned one thing: when you're chasing perch, you can never go wrong with gold perch or glow perch in the buckshots. Works everywhere. And then small puppet minnows in, you know, the two smaller sizes, and one of my favorite one is pink tiger or electric perch. Those two colors just work clear water, dark water. I don't care if you're in Otter Tail area. I don't care if you're near Duluth fishing big perch, or if you're in southern Minnesota, if you're on the backwaters of Mississippi. Those two colors work great. So buckshots and small puppets.
Now, of course, you could use any of those lures without meat on them, but more often than not, Bro is going to be tipping them with meat, and here's what he likes to use.
You know, there's a lot of bait you could potentially use for perch, and you know, I do bring a lot of bait. Minnow heads work great. Maggots work great. They stay on the hook really, really nice. Waxworms are probably my #1 favorite for perch. Jumbo perch, for tipping spoons, for tipping puppets, for putting on micro lures, for droppers. Waxies are my absolute favorite in the Dakotas. If you get a cold front, maggots are better because they're smaller bait and you can use one and it's a tiny presentation. But hands down, Minnesota, Dakotas, throughout the Midwest, into the UP, Lower Michigan, where I fished, waxies. And that is the bait that I like to have with no matter what, but I bring everything.
Now, we've talked a lot about jigging for perch, which is a lot of fun. It's a really exciting way to catch them. But what about set lines? Here's Bro's take.
Set lines always produce perch. They just always do. Using a small fathead, chub, large crappie minnow, whatever, using them on a glow shot jig or a forage minnow jig, single hook is probably the best, or just a just a little super glow hook and a split shot, that swimming minnow consistently moving slow sometimes out jigs the jigger. I mean, they catch fish, and perch are like a diesel engine. Slow, hard to start. Once they come up and they grab that bait, you don't need a bobber. They'll pull your rod down the hole. I mean, once they get their momentum, they'll just pull that thing. And many rods have been lost dead sticking for perch. If it falls out of the holder, it gets pulled across the bucket. Dead sticks, some days catch more than the jigging, and other days the jigging outproduces the dead sticks, but you never go anywhere without them. You'll end up with more fish by the end of the day in your bucket or to release, having dead sticks employed.
Now everybody loves talking about big fish, whether it's a big walleye, a big muskie, or a big perch. Now Bro has chased perch all over the perch belt and all the big fish destinations, and he's caught a lot of big fish all over the country. But can you guess where Bro caught his personal best perch? I'll give you a moment to think and a moment to make your guesses. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Okay, here's the answer.
My personal best jumbo perch have actually been on Lake of the Woods, and I've been out to Cascade, Idaho. I've been all over the place, and I caught them on a Northland rattling shad in the pink tiger, and I was actually using the smallest one, no bait, and I was ripping for walleyes, and I had a school of perch come in, and I had one that was 2 pounds on the nose. And went out to Cascade, Idaho after that. My biggest one out there was 115. And when you weigh these fish, it's just unbelievable how big they are. But there are some really big perch in Lake of the Woods. It's known for walleyes and saugers and sturgeon, but perch are probably a smaller percentage species. But in such a large basin with so much food, it acts just like your other big perch lakes like Devil's Lake or Cascade. When there's a ton of food, they grow fast in a short amount of time, and there are some over twos, and I've seen perch up to 16.5 inches. One time I was fishing out of Arneson's, and somebody was in the fish cleaning house, had a 16.5 inch perch up there, and I think that fish weighed 2.9. So there's some true hogs, and so my biggest perch was Lake of the Woods, but not by much, and then Devil's Lake at a 115.
So we've talked a little bit about location, we've talked about presentation, we've talked about big fish, but another part of the equation that you do not want to skimp on is fishing line. Having good fishing line that's the right size, the right material can make a huge difference for a day of perch fishing. So here's what Bro uses.
When you're targeting jumbo perch, you don't need real heavy line. 3 or 4 pound test, 4 at the most is all you need. If you get a lot of northerns or other things in the water, maybe get by with 5, but lighter line makes a big difference. They really study things. I mean, they don't have the best vision, but they could see rope sticking down in the middle of the lake. If you're in weed beds, you can get by with heavier line because there's stuff all over the place. But if you're in an open area on a flat, you better have 3 pound test. And with today's new lines, good fluorocarbons, you don't need to use heavy line. Even 2 pound test when you're getting down to little mini muskas, gill getters, mud bugs, and fishing in the basin. But if you're jigging and you're going to hit some other predator fish, then you probably want 4 or 5 pound test. And trust me, we've caught huge walleyes on 2 pound test, and they got nowhere to go. Unless you're in Dakotas where there's a lot of brush to wrap in, they got nowhere to go. You just take your time with them and they'll come up. But big perch can be fickle, so remember, light line.
Now let's dip our toe into the culinary side of perching, starting off with the best size of perch to harvest.
Perch, as far as harvest lengths to keep, most lakes have huge year classes coming up, so perch replace themselves with the next year class year after year. What I see more as an intervention is a high number of predators, walleyes or pike. will just terrorize the big perch. They're not eating the little ones. Of course they eat the little ones, but they're going to target big perch. So I think a good balance in, you know, the perch relation to the northerns and walleyes, as I've seen in all the lakes, have all changed in different ways. I think that the best size perch to harvest is probably letting them get a little bit bigger. 10 and up would be better. Let them get mature. You know, to me, in the past, we never kept the perch unless it was 11 inches. That's the kind of quality we've always had, 11-inch perch, and those are all nice ones. And you had to kind of work your way through them. But I would say 10 on up, and if you get a real giant, if you do get a 13 or 14-inch perch, look at them. Look at the tail, see if there's any yellow grub in it. If there's, you know, if it looks rough or it's been bit. Big perch have been through the ringer. A lot of them have something if you open them up. The best, cleanest perch to harvest are 10 to about just under 12. Those are the cleanest ones. They've gotten less trouble. They haven't had the hard knocks in the weed beds, you know. So, and then as far as perch, my favorite way to eat perch is coconut perch. Just like I like coconut walleye. It's really good, gives it a sweet taste. It's good anytime, even at breakfast. And serve that with a little bit of Frank's Red Hot.
Now, unfortunately, I've never had the honor of tasting Bro's coconut perch. I've heard it's really good, but I have had the chance to have his perch chowder, and it is absolutely delicious.
I love using perch for chowders because their meat is firm and it doesn't pulverize when you're cooking it in a chowder. And there's a cream chowder, but I like a red sauce chowder that has it's a little bit more of a jambalaya kind of thing, and with a little kick to it. And if you ever want to find my recipe, look up Bro's Perch Chowder on Angling Buzz, and you'll see it. And I probably have it with me when I'm guiding in the wintertime, and I don't say anything because I'll sneak away. It looks like I'm drinking coffee. And if I'm sweating because it's physically hot and it kicks because it's spicy hot, you know that I'm in my perch chowder, and it's so good. So it's a great meal to have on the ice. Warms you up, makes you want to drill a lot more holes, and it doesn't take that much perch to make the chowder. Just need a few cupfuls, and check it out, Bro's Perch Chowder.
All right, all this talk about perch chowder is making me hungry, so I think we should wrap up the video right here. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you're excited as I am to get out on the ice and chase down some perch. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that little red subscribe button down below because we have a lot more good stuff coming your way, and we will see you next time.